Assalamu alaikum. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me for this talk. So this is a very basic talk. After listening so many things, I think this would be rather more basic. Uh, so first of all, the topic of my talk, the topic is actually the echocardiographic assessment of systolic heart failure. So echocardiographic assessment of LV size and systolic function is essential for all patients presenting with heart failure. So it's essential for all patients who are presenting with heart failure to have an idea about the LV size and about the LV systolic function. For the assessment of LV size on echocardiography, we have to measure the LV dimensions, and in most of the guidelines still they use the dimensions and systolic dimensions as well as the diastolic dimensions, and the view on which we take the dimensions is basically the parasternal long axis view, and usually we take the dimensions in end-systole and end-diastole by doing ECG gating, and it should be perpendicular to the septum. That's very important that it should be perpendicular to the septum, and if you take the measurements on M mode, then it might not be perpendicular to the septum. So according to the guidelines, ideally the measurements of LV should be taken on 2D images, but if your M mode is more perpendicular to the septum, then you can take it on M mode as well. Then come the LV volumes. So basically dimensions are, if we take the LV volumes, that would be more relevant to the, or more representative of the LV size rather than taking the dimensions in one region only. But there are so many problems in, calculating or measuring the LV volumes, and because we usually do the 2D echocardiography, if we do the volumes on 2D echocardiography, then there are different methods. One of them is biplane disc summation method, and the other one is the area length method. And the biplane or the Simpson method, you take the 4-chamber view and then you actually trace the endocardial border in end systole and end diastole. But there are certain limitations to these methods because we are doing a lot of assumptions here, because we are actually calculating the volume on 2D. So there are a lot of assumptions here, because we are assuming that the ventricle is symmetrical in this case, and which may not be the case. And especially this would not be very applicable in patients with segmental wall motion abnormalities. There may be foreshortening of the LV apex, and the endocardial border may not be very clear. So for this, if you take the 3D image for assessing the LV volumes, that would be more accurate and more reproducible, and that relates more with the gold standard of LV volumes by CMR. But unfortunately, 3D echo is not available everywhere, and there is less expertise of 3D echo. So the advantages of taking LV volumes on 3D echo is that there is no geometric assumptions. Now you can see all the areas and there is no assumption to make, and this would be more accurate. But the problem again is that less expertise which is available, and there is low temporal resolution in these with 3D as well. So how do we assess that? So this was all about the LV size. So LV size is important in all patients with heart failure. Now come to the assessment of LV systolic function. There are a number of parameters which may be used for assessing the LV function. First of all, the most important one is the ejection fraction, then the regional wall motion analysis, then stroke volume, and the estimation of cardiac output as well as the cardiac index. And then comes the fractional shortening of LV, the tie index, the systolic tissue velocity of the mitral annulus, as well as the MAPC. And the last one is the strain imaging. But the things which are important here are actually the ejection fraction. And you all know the classification of heart failure is based on ejection fraction. Whether it's the heart failure with reduced EF, whether it's the heart failure with mildly reduced EF, or whether it's the heart failure with preserved EF. So estimation of EF is the most important thing on echocardiography, as well as the regional wall motion analysis. And the latest thing is the strain imaging. So I would discuss these in brief one by one. So first of all, the assessment of LV ejection fraction is the expression of global LV function. So there is lot of data on ejection fraction, and it's a strong predictor of clinical outcome in almost all major cardiac conditions. So all the guidelines, and you can see the guidelines, valvular heart disease and other things, is all dependent on the ejection fraction. But how do we do the ejection fraction on echocardiography? In most of the labs, the ejection fraction is actually done by a visual estimation, which is also called the qualitative assessment, or the eyeballing of the LV function. But you know, eyeballing is a very subjective thing. So visual assessment of the EF is a very subjective thing. If you have experienced, you know, a reader, then there would be less than 5% difference or variation. But if you are not experienced one, you are the beginners, then there might be more difference in the assessment, and there may be more variability in the assessment of LV systolic function. And this is the most important criteria. You are making the diagnosis of your heart failure patient just based on your EF. So that's rather more important. So it's rather more subjective, and it's experience dependent, and there is lack of standardization and large inter and intra-observer variability, especially with inexperienced readers. So these are the usual things which we do. We can take the images in short axis view, as well as in the 4-chamber and 2-chamber, and we visually assess whether the myocardium is contracting, whether there is enough thickening of the myocardium or not, and then you can decide whether this is severe or mild or moderate. And here in this case, this is severe LV systolic dysfunction, or the EF is severely reduced. But here on visual assessment, you can see that this is a normal kind of LV with normal LV systolic function or normal LV ejection fraction. So how can make the things more accurate? So by doing the quantitative measurements of LVEF, this would be rather more accurate, and there will be less variability. But the problem again is that the formula for the quantitative measurements of LVEF is LV end diastolic volume minus LV end systolic volume and divided by LV end diastolic volume. But on 2D, we usually just take the dimensions, not the volumes. So for the accurate calculations or quantification of EF, we actually need the volumes. And for LV volumes on 2D, all the geometric formulas are based on assumption that the ventricle will, adhere to a predictable shape. So we are assuming that the ventricle is contracting or is symmetrical. So this would be more reliable in patients in which there is global hypokinesia, or maybe there is globally LV is normal. But if there is segmental wall motion abnormalities, then this would not be very much reliable. So how do we do that? The most widely used method for determining ventricular volumes is the Simpson rule or the rule of disc. This technique requires recording of an apical 4-chamber view or a 2-chamber view, and then you can trace the endocardial border in end diastole as well as in end systole. And when you trace the border, and so the ventricle is mathematically divided along its long axis into a series of discs, which the software automatically does for you. So you have to just trace the endocardium, and then it would divide the LV into multiple discs, and individual disc volume is calculated as height multiplied by disc area, because this is 2D. So it can just calculate the area, and by multiplying with the height, it can actually calculate the volume of each disc. And the volume, the ventricular volume, is then represented by the sum of the volume of each of the discs. So this is the image. You can see that either in the 4-chamber or in 2-chamber view, you have to trace the endocardium in both in end diastole as well as in end systole. Then the software divides the whole ventricle into multiple discs, and then it would automatically calculate the volume of each disc, and then by summating the volumes of each disc, it would give you the LV volumes in end systole as well as in end diastole. And then it would automatically calculate the EF for you. So for a symmetrically contracting ventricle, either the 4 or the 2-chamber view can be used. If there is asymmetry of the ventricular geometry, a single plane view will not be sufficient, and in this instance, people usually recommend using the 2 views, the 4-chamber and the 2-chamber view. But again, there would be a lot of assumptions here. So the limitations is that there may be difficulty in tracing the endocardial border, so you need a very good image with the good endocardial definition. If the endocardium is not clear, then you might have difficulty in tracing the endocardium. If you are not having the good image and the apex is not very well opened, then if there is foreshortening, then again your volume calculation would not be accurate. And it is less reliable, as I told you before, in the presence of regional dysfunction. So to overcome this, the 3D echo is the best for calculating not only the LV volumes, but also the LV ejection fraction. And the volumes and the ejection fraction which are calculated by 3D echo are more reproducible and are more accurate, and they are comparable to CMR. But unfortunately, 3D echo is not available in each place, and there is less expertise available, at least in most of our centers in Pakistan. So I think if we do the calculation or visual estimation of the EF as well as the quantitative measurements of the EF in our patients on 2D, that would be sufficient. But if you have the 3D, then you should do that, and you should use the 3D for the assessment of the EF as well as the LV volumes. The other thing for the assessment of the LV function for patients with heart failure is the assessment of wall motion abnormalities. And for this purpose, the LV is divided into three levels: the basal level, the mid level, and the apical level. And each level, it's divided into segments. So basal level has 6 segments, the mid level has 6 segments, and the distal level or apical level has 4 segments. And then the 17th segment is actually the apical cap. So there is 17 segment model. And on this, you can visually see whether each segment is contracting properly and whether there is thickening of the myocardium. And if there is thickening which is more than 30%, then you would call it normal. But if there is thickening of 10 to 30%, then you would call it hypokinetic. If the thickening is less than 10%, then you would either call it severely hypokinetic, or maybe you can call it rather akinetic. So this dyskinetic area is out of phase, and the aneurysmal area, which is thinned and bulging both in systole as well as the diastole. So you can give the score to each segment. If all the segments are normal, then you would give the 1 score to each. If one segment is hypokinetic, then the score would be 2 for that segment. If it's akinetic, then you would give the 3 score. Dyskinetic, you would give the 4 score. And if aneurysmal, then you would give the 5 score. And then you can actually do the wall motion score index. So wall motion score index is the sum of wall motion scores divided by number of segments evaluated or assessed. So normal persons with normal EF, with normally contracting segments, this should be 1. Okay? So if it's like more than 1.7 or more than that, then it would be indicative of a significant, reduced function or significant wall motion abnormalities or perfusion defects. So these are the different methods. That is, one, I give you about the ejection fraction, mostly visual or maybe quantified or quantitative assessment of EF. The other one is the wall motion score index or assessment of segmental wall motion abnormalities. The third thing is stroke volume and the calculation of cardiac output as well as the cardiac index by continuity equation applying at LVOT. But all these conventional echo methods are indeed measure of indirect measures of systolic myocardial performance. They are not direct measure of systolic myocardial performance, so ventricular geometry can affect the analysis from conventional methods. So this is the limitation of all these things, all these conventional methods. So there was a need to have a more robust assessment of myocardial performance and a way of determining direct quantitative myocardial performance, which can also assess the regional myocardial function and which can evaluate the geometry independent of LV function. And because of these things, the LV myocardial strain came in the market. So what is the strain? Strain is the magnitude of deformation. If you deform an object, for example, a spring, and if you compress or stretch kar lein, dono surton mein it would be deformed. And this is the magnitude of deformation, and it is equal to the change in the dimension for a deformed object divided by its original dimension. So if the change length is L, then the strain would be L minus the original length, that is L naught, divided by L naught. So if you are reducing the size, then the strain would be in negative. But if you are stretching it, then the strain would be in positive. So if you apply this strain on LV, the LV myocardium undergoes a complex multi-dimensional deformation during the cardiac cycle. It's not in one direction only. It's multi-dimensional, in multi-directional, because Allah Miyan ने हार्ट इस तरह बनाया है कि उसमें बहुत सारी डायरेक्शंस में मायोकार्डियल फाइबर्स अरेंज हुए हैं, सिर्फ एक डायरेक्शन में नहीं है. इट्स अ वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग ऑर्गन. मैं अपने स्टूडेंट से यूजुअली कहता हूँ ये वो वाला ऑर्गन है जो कि उस वक्त स्टार्ट करता है जब आप पैदा भी नहीं हुए होते और उस वक्त तक चलता रहता है जब आप ख़त्म हो रहे होते हैं, जा रहे होते हैं. तो myocardial strain, there are three main directions of myocardial strain. One is the longitudinal one, that is the shortening of the LV in the longitudinal direction. The other one is the circumferential one, that is it's reducing the circumference. And the third one is the radial, that is there is thickening of the myocardium. So whenever there is shortening, then it would be negative. So longitudinal strain would be negative, the circumferential strain would be negative, but the radial strain would be positive. So how do we measure this on echocardiography? Initially, when strain came, the people used to measure it by tissue Doppler imaging, but that was more angle dependent. And now, zindagi आसान हो गई है आप लोगों के लिए. So basically, it's speckle tracking. So now, speckle tracking echocardiography is available in each machine, and you can do that by speckle tracking. So what is a speckle? Speckles are small dots or groups of myocardial pixels that are created by the interaction of ultrasonic beams and the myocardium. And they are considered as acoustic finger points for that region. And the speckle tracking echocardiography software actually identifies these speckles and then track them frame by frame. So this image would be helpful in understanding that there are multiple speckles, and speckle tracking software actually tracks these speckles frame by frame, and by tracking these speckles, it can calculate the displacement as well as the deformation and ultimately the strain as well as the strain rate. So among the three major types of myocardial strain, that is longitudinal, circumferential, and radial, the longitudinal strain is most commonly used because we know the standard normal values for the longitudinal strains, because there was less agreement, there was variability, and there was less agreement about the normal standard values about other strains. But for longitudinal strain, we know the standard normal values, and as well as for longitudinal strain, there is less inter-vendor variability. So it is now more practical, and you can do in your echo lab, and you can do longitudinal strain in any patient coming with heart failure. So clinically, LVEF appears to be the most relevant parameter for assessing the LV function, and most of the data is basically based on, and rather your classification is based on ejection fraction. But LVEF has several limitations. It provides only an indirect estimate of myocardial contractile function, and readily influenced by a number of factors, including loading conditions, and LVEF is not sensitive enough to detect minor changes in the contractile function and cannot detect subclinical myocardial damage. So if you are seeing a normal EF, if someone is coming to you with heart failure with preserved EF, then the strain comes, the value of strain is basically not with reduced EF, it's basically with preserved EF. Now you can assess, because that is more sensitive than ejection fraction, so there may be reduced LV function with normal EF, which can only be picked up on strain imaging, and practically speaking, the longitudinal strain. So strain imaging offers a means to directly quantify the extent of myocardial contraction and promises to overcome many of the limitations of LVEF. It is more sensitive and picks up the myocardial dysfunction before the LVEF goes down. So in heart failure patients, it's more important in patients with preserved EF. The global longitudinal strain is a very promising method to identify patients with mild systolic dysfunction, which is not reflected in reduced EF, especially in patients with heart failure with preserved EF. And the patient group in which you can do the myocardial strain, the longitudinal, global longitudinal strain, one group is, heart failure with preserved EF, the other group is patients on chemotherapy, and also the patients with cardiomyopathies. Because in patients with cardiomyopathies, it's not the average value of global longitudinal strain, but also the pattern of global longitudinal strain, because there would be a typical classical pattern in patients with amyloid and classical pattern in patients with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, as well as there is increasing role of strain in patients with valvular heart disease and in patients with chemotherapy. I have already described that. So also in patients with ischemia. So in subclinical ischemia, the strain would reduce earlier. So that's all about my talk. Thank you very much.